Hi, and welcome to today's episode of the Deep Roots Podcast, a production of the Davis College of Agricultural Science and Natural Resources here at Texas Tech University. I'm glad you joined us today as we take a deeper dive into the world of agriculture and the amazing people who are innovating and researching and making ag better. Today, I sat down with Dr. Catherine Simpson, an associate professor of sustainable and urban horticulture in the Department of Plant and Soil Science. We talked about everything from her work in sustainable and natural rubber sources like guayule to controlled environment agriculture and the implications it may have on food supply and nutrition and health. Dr. Simpson is a passionate teacher and really dedicated to, one, making her community better and making the world better, but also improving the lives of her students. So thanks again for joining us, and I hope you enjoy this conversation with Dr. Catherine Simpson. Catherine, thanks for coming in and being on today. It's exciting to get to hear a little bit more about your research, about you and what you do, and I know our listeners are super excited to hear from you. So thanks for being here. And just to start us off, why don't you introduce yourself, tell us about what you do at Texas Tech, what your position is, and for the uninitiated, what that means.
All right. Well, my name is Catherine Simpson. I'm an associate professor of urban horticulture and sustainability. And that basically means I do a little bit of everything. Urban horticulture and sustainability are very broad topics, and I don't like to be defined by certain things. So I tend to do the research that interests me and follow my heart and my passions and try to incorporate that and my love for the environment and plants into all that I do.
That's good. And it's nice that you can do that. I think as faculty, I think sometimes and as researchers, it's easy to get, pigeonholed into a certain, this is what you do, this is your thing. And it makes sense to a certain extent. We spend all this time studying a topic, but then I think we get into this because we enjoy learning.
Yeah, and I think that that's what I love about this position and what I do is I always learn, and I'm always learning new things. And, everything horticulture is fascinating to me. So, if it has to do with plants or plant physiology and things like that, plus, academic freedom is about exploring topics that interest us and all that.
Yeah, that's a great segue into, I guess, what does interest you? So you do, I personally know that you do more than any three people, probably at most places. But you research a lot of things and a lot of interesting stuff. So can you talk a little bit about your research and what you look into here as part of your position?
Well, again, I have a broad range of research projects right now, but I'll talk about the top 2 or 3 that I've been doing. But currently I have a research project on biofortification, which is the agronomic biofortification of plants using things like external application of vitamins to increase vitamin C in things like lettuce. So it's a lot easier than trying to genetically transform or enhance through breeding or genetic modification. We just do external applications in different ways and different concentrations to try to increase the nutritional composition of the plants. And I'm really passionate about that. I think that's some of the most interesting research and findings that we've had recently. I'm also doing research on guayule and alternative latex and rubber crops. We've got guayule, which is a desert plant. It's native to the Chihuahuan Desert. It's been grown on and off throughout the U.S. for about 100 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it would provide a domestic source of natural rubber and latex. And one of the reasons why we need this is because we only get latex and rubber or natural latex and rubber from the Hevea tree, which is the rubber tree, and that's only grown in Southeast Asia or South Asia.
Oh, okay.
And we can't grow it here. We've tried in Hawaii, we've tried other places, but it does not grow. In South America, it also grows. But the guayule plant produces the type of rubber and latex that we need. We've actually I know that Goodyear and Bridgestone have made tires from guayule rubber.
That's super cool. Well, and you were talking about the Chihuahuan Desert, and here at Texas Tech in Lubbock, we're not the desert, but we're like desert adjacent, right? We're
Yes.
almost, in a lot of ways, we operate under some of the same constraints. So, is water a big part of why you're looking into this? Is that a big driving factor behind this alternative crop?
That's one of the reasons, yes, because with a desert plant, you're going to have less water demands, or we hope that the irrigation requirements are going to be lower. And we know that in Arizona, they're operating with lower water requirements than they are for other crops. So things that take a lot of water out of our water system here, we might be able to replace or partially replace that land or the production with a crop that has lower water demands.
Okay. Well, and it's another, I guess, area for production, right? When we think about fiber being king in this part of the world, which, we grow a lot of cotton.
Yeah, well, and it's diversification too, because with the rising costs of cotton production, you want to be able to have other crops that might bring in more money to supplement. And we wouldn't want to produce, and we don't have the infrastructure yet to produce on all of the cotton acreage that we have. But in order to supplement, we're hoping that we could have like a cash crop to supplement with higher profits in some of the land that maybe people would want to take out of production for other crops.
It's really interesting. And so you've kind of mentioned a couple of sectors that you work in, right? You have environmental health with the water and natural sources of rubber and things like that. You've talked a little bit about physical human health through biofortification, but you also work a little bit in the mental health effects of plants. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah. I've had several students and I have done some research on people-plant interactions, for lack of a better phrase. But yes, we've done some research. Dr. Thomas has done research with me, and we've explored the benefits of therapeutic horticulture on veterans and their mental health. And Jonah Trevino has been doing research on not only community gardens and signage, but also his master's. He was working on nature benefits during COVID.
That's really cool. And I mean, I think this question's maybe almost silly to ask because of the breadth of what you do, but a big part of our research and a big thing we try to measure and figure out is impact. How are we having an impact, right? What are we actually doing? So how do you see the work that you do impacting not just our students and the body of knowledge and our literary backing for science, but just the community in general? How does this all help people?
I think it's difficult to quantify because some of the impacts of our research we're not going to find for a long time because it's the start. It's the spark that starts what's going to happen eventually in many cases. However, the impacts can be measured if you think about it in broader terms, because everything that we do, we hope we have an impact. Like for students, for example, my students, I hope that they're individually getting a lot out of the skills and the education that they have here. And then they're going to go out and they're going to be part of the workforce that impacts society. But that's just one small part.
Sure.
I think with things like biofortification, we can have real impacts on nutritional status of crops and having real tangible ways of increasing things like vitamin C in crops in a method that's accessible to many farmers, but doesn't cost a lot more in their production. But hopefully that margin, that profit margin, is going to be higher. With the latex and the rubber crops, we're going more for latex because it has a higher profit margin for production compared to Havea or to rubber rather. And if we compare rubber production with Waiule or Havea trees, it's always going to be cheaper just because the labor is so inexpensive in the countries in which it is produced.
Sure.
But if we go for something like latex, we can get some of that higher profit margin off of our products. So things like gloves or tracheal tubes or anything else. And the reason why it would be impactful is because Waiule doesn't contain the protein that causes the latex allergies that Havea does. And so we don't have Waiule latex allergies at the moment. And that is huge because a significant portion of the population has some degree of latex allergy, especially if you have medical problems or exposure, because they've said that they've seen in doctors and nurses and people that are in the hospital regularly have developed more latex allergies because of exposure.
Wow.
So not having that would be great. I mean, think of our medical industry and everything that we have there.
Well, and already we're having to find, different, I guess, products to make for people with those allergies. But if we had something that anyone can use, like, that's great. Accessibility it really goes up with stuff like that.
Yeah, and the thing is, natural rubber and natural latex contain properties that the synthetics don't. So with rubber tires, for example, airplane tires have to be, I want to say, about 100%, if not almost 100% natural rubber, because if they try to use synthetics, they will explode upon impact.
Oh.
And natural rubber is the only thing that will have the capacity to prevent that from happening. So that's one of the reasons why airplane tires are exclusively made of natural rubber.
That's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
And yeah, you don't want your airplane tires exploding. That's less than ideal.
Yeah. Well, and natural rubber makes up a lot of our regular car tires too. So with that, it helps with the longevity and the I think the traction and things. Other people can answer that better than me, but I'm not a tire person. But the impact could be, extensive, because if we have a source here, we don't have to worry about like the greenhouse gas emissions or carbon footprint of importing from other countries. And in times of war, we've seen significant uptick of investment in Waiule production in the U.S. because we want a natural source. We don't want to depend on other sources when we can grow something that can provide benefits here.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. So you mentioned, you're not a tire person or a, engineer or a physicist or the things that I guess go into making sure airplanes don't explode or tires don't explode. But that kind of, I think, means to me that you have to collaborate, that there are a number of partners across disciplines, both inside and outside the university, that, our research is a piece in that puzzle, or your research is a piece in that puzzle. So can you talk a little bit about some of the collaborations you work through, both, again, inside Texas Tech and then nationally and internationally?
Yeah, well, I think collaboration is a huge component in research because we can't know everything.
Right.
And we depend on others not only for their expertise, but also their impact in order to improve research as a whole. So being able to talk to other people, get ideas, get feedback, and just, improve as we go is important. And some of the collaborations I have here are in engineering. I work with the Texas Produced Water Consortium. And a lot of the engineers that we have there, we do research projects on alternative water sources like desalinated polished produced water and how that impacts plant growth and production. But we're also looking into how that impacts the environment. So I've got collaborators in NRM, I've got collaborators in engineering and chemistry and all those things. I also have collaborators at other universities. The YULA Latex and Rubber grant that I've got called TARDIS, we're working with...
It's a great name.
Yes. We're working with engineers and scientists all across the spectrum. So with Ohio State University, they're the lead institution on this. We are also working with Caltech, UC Merced, North Carolina State University, Case Western, and a few others. And their research and their expertise spans all disciplines. So we've got people that are doing social scientists. We've got social scientists doing research on engineering workforce development, and they are looking into how neurodiverse people can be included in training and gaining experience to work in these positions that we're going to have if, Wiley and rubber dandelion are widely grown crops.
That's really cool. And I think that, as we were talking about impact earlier, really expands that, right? It lets you reach into other fields and reach into other places that may not have been accessible to us as plant researchers in the past. That's, I don't know, a way to say that, almost a force multiplier, right? We can take the work we do and get it into more people's lives. And I think that's really cool.
Oh, yeah, because the opportunities that we have if we work with others is exponential. Because I, as a plant scientist, I could grow the plants, but I wouldn't be able to develop a new type of medical glove or tracheal tube or other medical equipment.
Right.
And, working with engineers and getting a lot of that viewpoint is really eye-opening, because it's just so much that we are able to do because we work together.
Well, and that's interesting. And I think that thinking about all of these things, a lot of moving parts. It's complicated. What challenges have you faced in developing these programs? Because one thing that I see is that as we're talking about pursuing our interests and pursuing our passions, we have to figure out the how, right?
Yeah.
How do the nuts and bolts of that work? And there are some differences between doing one thing and doing a lot of things. And so what challenges have you faced in the development of your research programs?
Well, first, I'd just like to say that challenges and issues and mistakes are all part of the research process. And that actually helps us perform research better. And it improves our skills and our flexibility and our ability to troubleshoot, because half the time I learn more from making a mistake or doing something wrong and then figuring out how to make it right than I do if I did everything perfectly from the beginning. And, we shouldn't be afraid of making mistakes in research. Now, we try not to make horrible mistakes.
Right.
I don't want to burn down the greenhouse, but
yeah, most of the time, yeah.
But sometimes the things we learn are by accident, like with, ethylene was discovered by accident as a plant hormone. And sometimes those bring up the questions that we need to answer in the future. And we all have challenges. A lot of the moving parts are a huge issue, is because there are things that we've got to do all the time and to put into it. And there's a lot of things that we juggle with teaching and with research and with student mentoring and training and all of the departmental requirements that we have. And, I make a lot of lists.
I do too, and then I forget they exist. And I think an integral part of list making is looking at the list. I'm working on it.
I have to keep it in its own special notebook.
That's smart. I like that. Um, you mentioned earlier that you're very much at the beginning of some of these projects, that it's novel research in a lot of ways, or relatively unexplored. And so we're doing a lot of exploratory things and trying to set the basis for the future. So in your mind, what does that future look like? Where are you headed with your research, or where would you like to head? And what things are you excited about that are on the horizon?
Well, I mean, there's a lot
Sure.
that I would like to see happen. One thing that I think is essential that we get in place is infrastructure. So infrastructure for latex and rubber extraction for waiule and rubber dandelion, I think that is really important. Forming partnerships with growers to, start dabbling in this production of a new crop that we've seen kind of here and there, but maybe not consistently, or maybe not from this generation of farmers. And so I'd like to expand the acreage and expand the infrastructure to where whenever we do grow it on a larger scale, we're able to process it and move it from here, and also ultimately create a lot of jobs in this region, and be able to maybe do something like co-locating our extraction facilities with cotton gins, where in the off season we could have the seasonal workers work all around the year and have something to do even whenever the ginning season is over.
That is such a cool idea. Because when we think about sustainable production and what that means, I think all of those different elements, the economic side, the environmental side, and the social side, where we're trying to take care of our people and make sure they have jobs and make sure they're well cared for, that hits so many of those high points. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and I think there's so much potential with projects like this because, waiule can't be grown everywhere. And
Right.
this is one of the regions where it can be grown. And being able to improve our economy and improve the job opportunities for people in our region that will likely impact Texas Tech and our graduates, I think would be, such a great opportunity.
Very cool. Well, I appreciate your time and I appreciate your insight into all of this. And as we wrap up here, I'm curious what you would like people to take away with them. Because, you cover a lot of ground. And this is a hard question to answer, in all honesty. It always is for me. But as folks are listening to this and trying to, contextualize what you do and contextualize your knowledge and your wisdom in this, what piece of information do you really hope people take home with them?
Well, I hope that people start, and if not already, thinking about plants and how plants affect us in our daily lives. Because from food to fiber, we're constantly exposed to plants, and we eat them every day. The nutritional status of our plants impacts our lives and our quality of life. And from agronomic crops that are essential for our diet to horticultural crops that improve our quality of life and our food options, I think that it's really important that we take time out and see how being around plants and being knowledgeable of how these plants affect us every day, and what we eat, what we are housed in, our clothes, all of these things. And I'm rambling, but
No, yeah.
but the impact is there. And even if it's just taking a walk in the park, it's been shown to improve mental health. And being around nature is how we're going to ground ourselves and hopefully impact future generations.
That's awesome. I agree. Yeah, I think that's great. So Catherine, that was wonderful. I really appreciate it. If people want to learn more about you and your lab and your work, where can they find you?
I have a website. If you Google TTU Urban Horticulture and Sustainability Lab, that will bring you onto my lab page. And My email is just catherine.simpson@ttu.edu. So feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Great talking to you too.